infectious diseases, research, medicine, health. Welcome to Outbreak News Interviews. And now, broadcasting from the Outbreak News Skylar Studios in beautiful West Central Florida, here is your host, microbiologist and editor of OutbreakNewsToday.com, Robert Harriman.
Well, hey everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to Outbreak News Interviews. Now, Dr. Robert Desowitz was a scientist, researcher, and you may know him best as the author of several very informative and entertaining books, like New Guinea Tapeworms and Jewish Grandmothers, and Who Brought Pinta to the Santa Maria. Well, Dr. Desowitz left us on March 24th, 2008. Now, being such a fan of his books made me decide to learn more about his life and his work. So joining me today to talk about Bob Desowitz is Lewis Miller, MD. Dr. Miller is the Chief of Malaria Cell Biology at the NIAID at the NIH, and according to Dr. Dezowitz's daughter, Duba, one of her dad's best friends. Dr. Miller, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. I first met Bob when he came to Thailand, where I was working, and we got very close because we were staying in the same place for a while after we arrived in Thailand, before we found places to live. And this was in, 19, I'm trying to remember when when I went out there.
The 60s?
Yes, that's right. I'm trying to remember the year, but I'm having trouble.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's trouble when you get 85. You forget details. But it's been a long time when we were together. And then we kept in touch and stayed together someone came to me to write a particular thing, and I suggested Bob be the one to take it over, and he did, and this led to his writing books. And the character of his books are always humor and quite insightful and knowledgeable, and they're a great pleasure to everyone who read them. In fact, when he died, I went to the editor of the New York Times obituaries to have Bob's obituary put in there, and he said he really liked his books. He might not be able to do an obituary for various reasons of space and competing things, but he said he liked his books.
Yeah. So, can you discuss Dr. Dezowitz's lengthy professional career as a scientist and a parasitologist?
He started with one of the great parasitologists. He was trained by him. His name was Short. Professor Short was in England at the London School and had a protozoology and parasitology there. And Short was a fantastic scientist, and he was the one who, first of all, and most famously, identified that there was a third cycle. You know, the two cycles in malaria are the ones in the mosquito and the one in the host, in us, when we get sick from malaria. But there's a third cycle, which he discovered, which is in the liver. And the way he did that was they infected with sporozoites, and this is in around just before 1950, 49, 48. And this was really a big discovery that there was evidence for another cycle from various research, but he actually identified where it was by sectioning every organ and everything to find an animal that had been infected with malaria, to find where the parasite goes. And he found it was in the liver. And this is a major discovery. And then the second thing he did, which was done before that, was discover how a different infection called leishmania, it's transmitted, and it's transmitted by blocking it's very similar to plague when the mosquito, the insect gets blocked up when transmitting leishmania. Now it's not a mosquito leishmania, it's a sandfly, but he worked that out by while an infected sandfly was feeding, he fixed it right there and sectioned it, but that's all short. And then someone wrote an obituary on him when he wasn't dead. He was about 100 years old at the time, and he had comments about that. He was always arguing about things with his colleague, P.C.C. Garnham. But Bob was the last student of Short, and the great protozoologist, and who had made many discoveries. So that was the background. And then he was sent out to Africa for his first work after he got his PhD, and he worked there on infections with trypanosomiasis, which is at the African lab there. And he used to. The funny thing to me, well, these are all strange because I don't understand English ways. There's an English education, English Research Institute. When the Queen would come, everyone would use the bathroom in relation to their rank, which I found strange. But anyway, and he also brought out there to Africa, when he was out there, a very famous protozoologist, Bill Traeger, who is all these people are dead now. But anyway, Bill was the first to culture malaria, which is a major breakthrough. And he went out there to get parasites from people in Africa for his research. And Bob was his host during his stay out there. So this relates to his work, which was mainly on African trypanosomes, not with Bob Desowitz, not with Bill Traeger, but in his own research. And he adapted one of them to the mouse line, which he was famous for. And I guess that's the main research. And then he was brought to where I was, which is a Walter Reed Research Institute in Thailand. He before that, he'd been head of parasitology in Singapore in a lab there. And there's he was concerned about the fact that there was some feelings about foreign scientists. Now, of course, Singapore has a lot of foreign scientists. It's not a problem. But at that time, he was worried about it. So that's when he came up to Thailand to work. And that's when he became, I would say, my mentor and my teacher.
Okay. Dr. Miller, when did Dr. Desowitz first develop a taste for writing?
Wow. I guess he was born with it.
Yeah.
He was, his use of words and knowledge of words was fantastic. He would do the New York Times puzzle in about 5 minutes, and the New York Sunday puzzle, crossword puzzle. And he always was very good at it and had a way of making things enjoyable and clear. That's why when they came to me to write this thing, I can't remember what it was on, the original starting Bob into writing about all this was when it was a publication from the New York Academy of what's it called? New York Academy of, it's the place where, in New York, where they have the planetarium and much of the animals and everything. It's much better than Washington, I must say, because in Washington, they're not allowed to show evolution, or weren't allowed to. But in New York, they showed very clearly what evolution was going on. So he wrote for that. They had a magazine, which you may know, and he wrote. They had asked me, and I'm not a good writer like he was, and we wrote one thing together, which was on Babesia, and this one thing we wrote together was published in a Sunday Washington Post during the Christmas week. And they were not supposed to change anything in it, and they changed the title. But that was because they pointed out that the title is done by a different editor. But that's the only thing we wrote together. And I remember really well the first sentence of it, which I would not have come up with, but Bob did. Rich people are not like you and me. They go to Nantucket and get babesiosis. And so everyone got upset with that and didn't realize it came from a poor little rich boy. It was taken from that book by what's the name of the guy who wrote all these? Oh God! But anyway, it was from that one of the poor little rich boy. It was just a paraphrase, and people got upset. A few people, which when you publish you must realize this. You get out there, and people get upset for strange reasons, and they got upset because they thought we were being socialists. But anyway, that was life in the publication. That was the only thing we did together. We worked together in research, but not in this area, not in his writing. His writing was all Bob.
Yeah. So he wrote for magazines prior to his first book, which I think was in the 1980s.
Yes. That's right. Right.
So are you familiar with all his books?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. What was your favorite?
Well, Jewish Grandmothers, I guess, is one of the best.
Yeah.
And it's a very nice one. The other one I always go back to is the origin of parasitic infections in Americas. I was always interested in whether malaria was introduced prior to the Cortezes coming to Mexico. And I think it was introduced here from Asia by sailors who came across, individuals who came across to South America prior to Columbus. And they brought it over here. And he talks about all that. That was in the that book you mentioned, who brought, I can't remember the name of it now, but it relates to the 3 books of Columbus, the 3 boats of Columbus.
Who brought Pinta to the Santa Maria?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It talked a lot about, in that book, about how infectious disease was brought to America.
Yeah.
And it was quite, well, it was just,
yeah. He was quite a storyteller.
The other one was, yeah, I liked the other one because it described a nice, easy way for people to learn parasitology, and many places used it for teaching.
Exactly.
Parasitology.
Yeah, that was actually.
And it was very pleasant.
The New Guinea Tapeworms and Jewish Grandmothers was actually
that's right.
That was required reading for me when I was doing my master's. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you asked about his other, what he thought of other books. There's a very famous writer who wrote about all the famous scientists in the 1930s, I guess it was. And he would be a major competition because everyone read those books by, I can't remember his name now, but they're wonderfully written. And he wrote all about malaria and other things. He covered everything.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and close with this. Do you have any final thoughts on anything we didn't talk about Bob Desowitz?
No, not really. But he was a wonderful person, and people really enjoyed him, including later in life when he went out to Papua New Guinea to work with Carol Lee Desowitz. The person who's head of that lab was quite famous, and he really liked Bob. And I think that was the character of Bob. He was interested. He told interesting stories, and he knew biology so well and evolution and everything. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Lewis Miller, for sharing your time and your long relationship with Dr. Robert Desowitz. I appreciate it, sir.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Okay, take care.
All right, you too, sir. Thank you.